Just keep paddling all the way to the end.
Hello and welcome back to 340 Paddler. Today I want to talk to you about river navigation. How do we go down the river safely? How do we know where the channel is, this mythical beast of fast water which we're supposed to follow, but at times avoid? We're going to see markers like this. Now, this marker tells us where we're going, where upstream barges are going, and our river mile, counting down to the confluence in St. Louis. Now, one thing to keep in mind as I move forward here, these are primarily for barges, these behemoth boats, which need to know where the deep channel is. We, however, are in kayaks that draft inches, not 8 or 9 feet. So we can go elsewhere. For example, if a barge is passing, we can be over here just fine. We can simply slip to the inside. Do not get on the outside of a barge. You don't want to be caught between a barge and the riprap or the wood or whatever is on shore. It's not going to be a good day. But as I said, you can always go to the inside, away from the barge, or better yet, get off the river. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's talk about bank markers. First of all, you will notice that on the left bank, we tend to have red triangles. On the right bank, green squares. And these are orienting you. So as you go downriver, this is what you're going to see. So for example, when you start the race from Caw Point, you're going to be coming into the river here and cutting across and then just sort of following this bend. Since you are staying on that side of the river, you have green squares in these positions, or they would be in those positions. So it tells you exactly where you need to be for the channel. That being said, there are also crossing markers, which tell you when the channel is going to cross from left to right or right to left. And these are the checkerboard patterns that we tend to see. Now here we see Burger Bend as one example, and you would be coming in here. You're going to see the green square, which tells you you're staying on this side of the river. And then you see the crossing marker. And what you're going to do is you're going to scan across until you see the next crossing marker. And basically you're going to go from point to point. And keep in mind, water does not do 90-degree turns, and it does not move in perfectly straight lines. So there's going to be a little curve to this, but you're going to move over to the opposite bank, hitting that crossing marker. And then you're going to see a red triangle, which tells you to stay on that bank until you get all the way over here when you see another crossing marker, and that tells you to look to the other side, to cross to the other side. Now this, I added these markers for what should be in Burger Bend. This is what is in Burger Bend. So here we see the green to stay on that bank. And what you're seeing is the upriver and the downriver, the upriver and downriver markers here. But basically it's stay on this side. That's the square. Then we see the diamond, which tells us to cross over here. And then we see a triangle, which tells us to stay over there until we get to another diamond. When we cross, stay, cross, etc. So it's going to guide you down the river. What if you want to know where the barge is going? So you see a barge coming, you don't know where it's going. When you go past the marker, you're going to see this crossing marker, which means you are crossing. But they have a different marker. So simply look over your shoulder at the marker that they would be looking at. This one tells you that they'll be staying on this side. They have just crossed, and then they'll be staying here. So that tells you, okay, I need to get out of their way. Instead of crossing following the markers, I'm going to cross much more suddenly, laterally across the river. Now, in general river navigation, there's something to keep in mind. You need to think of the Missouri River as 5 lanes of traffic. And you want to spend most of your time in lanes 2 and 4. Why? Well, we're often tempted to be out here in lane 1 or lane 3. The problem is, lane 5. Lane 1 and lane 5 tend to have very turbulent water. That water is running over wing dikes. It's interacting with shallower water underneath you. It may look like it's moving faster, and at the surface it might be. But keep in mind, your boat drafts 2 or 3 inches deeper, and it's not moving faster there. The channel tends to be in these areas, the equivalent of lane 2 and lane 4, and simply crosses between the two. You don't spend time in lane 3 because there's really no fast water there. So don't worry about that. Just try and keep in 2 and 4 and cross between the two when you see those crossing markers. And keep in mind that channel that you're looking for is not something that's 10 feet wide. We're talking something that is 100 feet wide. So it is pretty darn big. There isn't a perfect point in the channel. There isn't a perfect line to take. It's a big 100-foot wide channel that you need to be in. So let's use this to move through Burger Bend. First of all, we are at Burger Bend looking upriver. So we would have Herman up here, and we're coming around. And what you're going to do when you look at this, and this is assuming you're not looking at channel markers, if you're navigating without channel markers, you simply take the outside of the bend. And that generally keeps you in a fairly good position. So you're going to stay out here, maybe a little further away than my drawing. So you're in lanes 2 and 4. And then you're going to see that it crosses. So the water is going to cross all the way over here, and then you're going to start turning there. Always stay to the outside of a bend, and don't do an S-curve. So you wouldn't go in here because the water isn't being pushed in there. The water is being pushed more or less straight off the wing dike. So you would follow that same more or less straight path until it starts interacting with the opposite bank. Again, don't get too close to the opposite bank. You will run into a lot of boils and eddies and turbulence that you don't really want to deal with, especially day 2, 3, and 4 on the 340. Let's talk about night navigation. Now at night, I see people shining lights all over the place, and that tends to be a big issue. So if you sit there and you're shining lights up on the shoreline, it slows you down for one, and secondly, it will take your night vision. Instead, watch the tree line. And as you look at the tree line, you see there's a nice subtle curve right here that goes down, and then right at this point, there is a more dramatic shift. As you get closer to that tree line, you're going to see that shift get bigger. So it will look like one side is just sort of curving off, and then suddenly the trees are taller on this side and getting bigger. Aim for that point. So here we're aiming right here. At night, you can stay more or less to the middle of the river if it makes you feel better. But this way, you always know where you're going. And keep in mind, you might be looking at an area for 20 minutes before you get to that tree line. It may look very confusing. Don't worry about it. As you get closer, it will become more obvious where you're going to go as that difference in the tree lines on the left and right bank becomes greater. There are very few places on the Missouri River between Kansas City and St. Charles where this will get confusing. Burger Bend is one of them. There's a small area outside Jeff City that for some reason always messes with me, maybe 5 or 6 miles upriver of Jeff City, but I know that the river is going to turn right at that point, so it's not too bad. And you will get used to this quickly. Follow the tree lines. Do not sit there and shine the shoreline. You will do nothing more than slow yourself down and remove your night vision. Also a reminder, if you ever do see a big yellow dot, it means a waterfall. Be careful. This is 340 Paddler, hoping that you keep your paddle in the water.